Welcome back. You're still tuned into the Thursday edition of the nation's most favorite breakfast show, Good Morning Namibia. Now, persons with disabilities are discriminated against, sometimes because of sheer malice, but often unintentionally. It is against this background that the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, together with other stakeholders, will be hosting a national disability conference that kicks off today. With more details on this, I'm now joined by Natalie Russmann, resident representative of the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, Namibia-Angola Country Office. Guten Morgen, Frau Russmann, und herzlich willkommen.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me. I'm happy to be one of my favorite shows in the morning.
I'm very happy to hear that. How are you doing on this gift of a Thursday morning?
Oh, very well, very well. I'm very happy to be here and looking forward to the day.
Fantastic, fantastic. Now, often we hear that people with disabilities experience challenges at the workplace, particularly as far as access is concerned. What does that picture look like from your perspective?
Well, looking at the legal framework, I think Namibia is doing quite well when it comes to disability or integrating people with disability. But the problem lays more in the reality. If you do our reality check, it's quite difficult for them to find a job and to be accepted because they do need some assistance, some tools in order to fulfill their profession. But nonetheless, they are qualified, some of them, but they do not have the same opportunity as people without disabilities. And yeah, maybe there is fear, maybe lack of awareness, and maybe we just need also role players and maybe also initiatives in order to make it possible that they can participate in the workplace.
Mm. Am I understanding you correctly that the legislative framework exists, but it's the implementation that we're struggling with?
Absolutely. The framework looks quite good. We do have our constitution which says that nobody shall left behind, that there shall be no discrimination, and all people of Namibia should have access to information and to jobs, to have possibilities in regards of housing, and yeah, the framework is quite well, but the implementation, if we just look around us, we don't see them in our workplace, so that tells us something. They're there, only because we are not seeing them. That doesn't mean that they do not exist. Sometimes they are hidden in their families, or they do not dare to get out and show what difficulties they might have. And so it is rather a problem of acceptance and just to try it. Yeah, just try it, give them a chance. That's what we would like to achieve with this conference as well.
Frau Russmann, hearing you say that often we don't see them, I think it's also important at this juncture to perhaps touch on what we deem to be a disability.
Absolutely. It is very important, for instance, that we have our national census, because we do need data in order to place the budget correctly. We are in the times of budget constraint, and it is without proper data, there is a danger that resources might be misleaded. So it is very important to have correct data, meaning we must know what is the number of people with disability, what kind of disabilities are they, and where are they, in which regions. Is it more in the urban areas, more in the rural areas? Are there children among them? So with that correct data and analysis, and we will be able, meaning also the government, to put the right action, yeah, and to place the support for them on the right area. Otherwise, we are just stepping in the dark.
In your introductory overview, you mentioned that although there are people with disabilities who are qualified, they often do not get recruited. What we do see often is when a vacancy is being advertised, that persons with disabilities are in fact encouraged to apply. Is that just lip service? Don't we see that being practiced?
Well, I think there must be a system, or as I said, maybe an initiative to motivate also companies in the private and also in the public sector to employ people with disabilities. And it starts with the interview. Yeah, they might need some help or some assistance. For instance, they might need interpreters, sign language interpreters, for instance. Where are they? We've been talking to different institutions and associations who are dealing with this on a daily basis. So in Namibia, there's, for instance, a lack of sign language interpreters. And if they're not there, how do they manage that interview? It already starts in the beginning that they are not having the same opportunity. So that is one have to focus on, to look at how we can make their life a bit more comfortable and make them easy to access to the same opportunity in terms of workplace, in terms also of information. Yeah, that's very important, very crucial. Otherwise, we will leave them behind. And as I said, there are some types of disabilities where they're able to think, where they're able to make decisions, where they're able to assist their colleagues, and it is just sometimes small assistance, for instance, in regard of tools or interpretations, and maybe people who can assist them to get from A to B. Also, mobility is a concern. If you just see the buildings around us, especially the older building, there is a missing of a ramp, for instance, and many things. Also, let's look at the facilities, the sanitary facilities, how they look like. We as Konrad Adenauer Foundation, we see this as an obligation, because we would like to look at it in an inclusive manner, in a holistic manner. And it started, we have an obligation to look at our offices itself. Are they adequate to people with disabilities? No?
Depending, of course, on the nature of the disability.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now, you're speaking about the lack of sign language interpreters in the country. Some people, of course, hearing impaired, others are visually impaired. Talk to us about how accessible you believe public information is to persons with disability.
Absolutely. This is also one of our concern and a very crucial thing. We must think that, for instance, people with visual impairment, they do need the Braille letters in order to read the messages, especially when it comes to public information. Yeah? When it comes to let's say, important information in regard of election, for instance. When we'll be talking, for instance, about this, they must be able to read or to understand what the message is. And it is about participation, it's about using and acting their democratic rights. So it's very important that we have to provide our information, let's say, for the deaf and for the visually impaired. Then we already cover a quite huge number of people with disabilities. That might already make, probably, I don't have any reliable data, maybe already half of our population, not half of the people with disabilities. If we take care of for instance, people with the deaf and people with visual impairment, of course we don't want to neglect the others, but we also have to be realistic, what's manageable.
One step at a time.
Absolutely.
Step at a time. Speaking about one step at a time, how nuanced is the public discourse, and would it include matters such as speaking about guide dogs as well?
Yeah, that's also an important thing, which we do not really see very often when we just go around here in Windhoek or in a rural area. I haven't seen anything. Or that is also something that we should make possible for them, and that this kind of help and assistance shall be there.
You emphasized earlier that it's only in the presence of reliable data that we can make targeted interventions. We did hear with the announcement of the midterm budget review in the National Assembly recently that the long-deferred census may be taking place next year. How will that help us guide the way?
That will help us a lot, because, as I mentioned in the beginning, we are in a time of budget constraints. That we have to look very carefully where to place the budget, and education and social affairs. This is probably one of the most important things to spend budget for. And when we have reliable data, so we can see, for instance, in what region and areas action plans needs to be implemented, and what volume of budget needs to be distributed in that regard. And for instance, if there's a lack of interpreters, sign language interpreters, okay, we must do something that this will become a profession. It's not a hobby or something. It also will help employment. I also try to motivate or to see this sector, disability, can also be, put it like this, a kind of business sector where people can get engaged, can get employment, can have a profession in that regard. We have a lot of caring people here in Namibia who have a social consciousness, and they can also learn professions in that area. It somehow also belongs a bit to the health area. So why don't we connect that and we engage young people graduating from school, maybe not going further to tertiary education, university or so forth, and try to become a sign language interpreter. I think the country needs them. Or to have other profession where they can help people with disability, for instance, in regard of mobility, driving them around. Maybe there will be a service who will drive them around. I'm thinking about a small enterprise company who will be able to run this. So if you just open our eyes, our mind, just think out of the box, do brainstorming, it can enhance the entire country. So not just helping, but also in regard of employment to boost a kind of economic sector which has been neglected a bit.
Indeed. Another feature which we saw in the recent midterm budget speech is that the grant for disabled children will be increased in the next financial year. How long away will that go?
Well, I would see that this is the right direction. It's the right step to increase the grant for people with disability. But to be honest, when we are talking to them, it's not just money or funds what they want to have. They would like to have acceptance, to be accepted in the society and to participate in the society. And this is not just solved by grants. So it starts by looking at the infrastructure where we are living in. Are they compatible with the needs of the people with disability?
Thank you. Thank you, Frau Russmann. In conclusion, what can we expect at the conference today?
Well, the conference will be running today and tomorrow. We will expect a lot of information. There are a lot of stakeholders taking part in that conference, giving their contribution. Our main aim is to raise awareness, of course. Secondly, also to give a platform for networking. So we have different stakeholders, different ministries, Ministry of Gender, Ministry of Justice. Then we have the Electoral Commission to mention also. We have some OPDs within the conference and many other, the Namibian Disability Council, the list is long. So we give them the possibility to discuss the matter, to look at synergies so that we are not duplicating things, and of course to take it forward. It's not just a one-day conference, a two-day conference. It's something that's really close to our heart that we implement in our activities.
Frau Russmann, wir bedanken uns sehr herzlich bei Ihnen.
Sehr gerne. Es war ein Vergnügen. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being here.
That was Ms. Natalie Russmann from the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung talking to us about the National Disability Conference that will take place in Windhoek today and tomorrow. We will be right back after a brief break.